Okay, hi everyone. We're going to get started. My name is Alyssa Coley. I am the incoming chair-elect of Women in Security and Privacy. That's a nonprofit organization that works to advance women and underrepresented communities in the fields of security and privacy. We have a community room over here and a vendor booth over there if you want to come check us out. And I will let you introduce yourself.
Hey everyone, my name's Irene. I am Vice Chair of Women's Security and Privacy. Here with me, we have our incoming Assistant Treasurer. We are so excited to partner with EFF to bring you this talk. I know if we are huge fans, you guys are also probably huge fans of EFF. Is that right? Confirm with claps and cheering, please. Woo! Okay, so without further ado, I'm going to hand this off to Alexis to get us started.
Hi, everyone. I am Alexis Hancock. I am the Director of Engineering of the Public Interest Technology team at EFF. I've been at EFF about 7 years, and I primarily work on the CertBot project.
I'm Cliff. I've been with EFF for about a year. I'm Alexis's peer. I also lead a team on our Public Interest Technology crew, and that's me, yeah.
My name is Thorin, Klosowski. I am the oddball here. I'm on the activism team. I work on our surveillance self-defense website. Yeah.
And I'm Cooper Q, Cyber Tiger. I'm also on the Public Interest Technology team. Cliff and Alexis are my bosses. And I've been at EFF for 11 years, currently working on Ray Hunter and previously working on Privacy Badger and many other things.
I guess we can start it.
I wasn't going to go.
Yeah, do you want to get going on?
Yeah, sure. I'll talk first. Okay. All right. I guess I'll just do like a general visual survey so we know what to talk about, what not to talk about, not to overextend. How many people here are familiar with Privacy Badger? Okay, we got a little half. Cool. All right. How many people here are familiar with CertBot? Okay, we got about, okay, all right, we can talk about that too. How many people here are familiar with Ray Hunter? Okay, we gotta go a little half, a little quarter there. Okay, cool. I think I'll start off talking about, CertBot. So the Public Interest Technology team, we are mostly known for the tools that we work on that are open source, and we primarily try to make security ubiquitous and sort of common sense for everyone. So CertBot came out of that initiative of the Encrypt the Web initiative from when you had the Snowden leaks and all of that. So I work on a project that helps automate TLS certificates for web servers. So it used to cost a lot of money to have TLS, and now I'm talking to a whole new generation of engineers that didn't even know that TLS used to cost money, which is amazing because I remember struggling and configuring virtual hosts with paid certs and losing my mind. So the fact that I get to work on a project now that saves a lot of engineers the grief that I went through in my early career makes me really happy. And I think a common thread through all of our work is that we really enjoy what we do, and we really are adamant about the mission that we have around making security free and ubiquitous and making sure that, we also protect people along the way. So that is what CertBot is as a project. So if you have any web servers out there that's kind of loose and running wild with HTTP, install CertBot today. Go to certbot.eff.org and make sure that you are using it. And if you come across problems, we're a really responsive team. We're a small team that happens to be really responsive, which is, I think, it's really rare in open source. So that is CertBot. I guess I will pass it off to someone else to talk about Privacy Badger, maybe, possibly. Okay.
Alexis, how much of the web is encrypted now thanks to CertBot?
Oh, I've been asked by a random stranger how much of the web is encrypted now thanks to CertBot. So if you're not familiar with CertBot, maybe you're more familiar with Let's Encrypt as an initiative. So CertBot is one of the most primary clients used to get certificates from Let's Encrypt and automate it for web engineers and sysadmins. So a lot of the web around 2010, we had a actual static list of maybe 10 sites that supported HTTPS, but now looking at the numbers, if you go on the Let's Encrypt website, at least over 80% globally is HTTPS without thought from the user or having to put a setting or having to configure anything themselves. Most web traffic is HTTPS, which makes things a lot harder to spy on you. So that's another aspect of CertBot, where though a very like innocent tool in itself, it helps fight surveillance in a very big way, because now the whole hacker in the cafe on the public free Wi-Fi is less of a threat now. So it's much harder to spy on someone on an open network thanks to HTTPS, thanks to the fact that S secure is able to encrypt and hide a lot of the things you would submit to a website or a form or through a payment system. I remember the old guard of people of like really not trusting putting their payment information on websites. And granted, they were right. I mean, it was in the clear, like your credit card numbers and such. But now that we have mostly an encrypted web, you can do that sort of thing with HTTPS. Now, that doesn't stop surveillance and it doesn't stop the more sophisticated tactics, but it does really make it harder for people to just naturally spy without much work now. It's always good to put another hurdle up. So the fact that over the 10 plus years we've made the web more encrypted is a really big win for us at EFF, and it's something that I should probably talk about more too, because it's a win that I hope come to fruition as well. And it's a win that I think it's one of those fights where like across the board, no matter where you are, you can appreciate. So it's something that I am very proud of that we did and worked on and actually did it, because once upon a time it was considered ridiculous to have most of the web be on HTTPS, or the vision just wasn't there, and we helped create that vision and put it into play. Oh, thank you. Thank you for the claps. Yeah. I guess in terms of like talking about like surveillance and stuff like that, do you want to talk about like SSD real quick, Thorin?
Sure. Yeah. I can talk about SSD. So the main project I work on is called Surveillance Self-Defense. It was started 15 years ago. No, actually 16 years ago. It's probably the longest running, continually updated security guides that exist on the internet, as far as I know. Before this, I was a journalist, and I wrote a lot of those now dead security guides. It's just the internet is filled with bad advice, and it isn't because it was bad at the time. Usually, it is because they are just never updated and changed. So surveillance self-defense is about creating a repository of information for everyday people to learn about security threats, figure out how to do risk assessment, and decide what things to care about and what things they need to worry about. 16 years ago, that was usually government surveillance of activists and lawyers and people speaking out. Nowadays, it's kind of, frankly, it's everybody. It's people in the US, it's people around the world. It doesn't really matter if you're an activist or if you're just someone shopping for something online. You probably have concerns and risks that you need to go through. So what surveillance self-defense is all about is teaching you how to think about those things. We don't do like guidance for specific tools. We don't tell you what kind of password manager to use, just that you should use a password manager, or what a VPN really does, why you would use it, when you would not use it, which is most of the time, it turns out, and a lot of that. So it's a lot about creating guidance for everyone online to be safer and to teach other people how to be safe. I think the kind of really interesting thing looking back at those guides, like when I first started a few years ago, I went back and I read the guidance from 15 years ago, and it is written by people who, well, it's very clearly written by tech people who hate the government and who are worried about people in other countries. And it had a lot of guidance and words that were very off-putting for a lot of people. It uses a lot of military language. It uses like threat modeling, which many of you are probably used to. But if you go to someone who is not a person interested in technology and tell them, we're going to do some threat modeling now, they are not stoked to have that conversation at all. At all. So we use security planning, which is a way to kind of we have found brings people in, it brings people on board, it helps people kind of understand what they might need to do. And I don't know if I want to say that this was a good thing that came out of COVID, but let's pretend that I can say that this was a good thing that came out of COVID, is that people kind of learned what that meant for them. They learned how to do like security planning, risk assessment. They could decide if they're going to a big conference, they might be taking different precautions than if they're going to like see their grandma. And it works kind of the same with learning how to use different security tools online. You need to figure out what you need, what's good for you, what isn't. Especially nowadays when we have things like protests. That's been a big one this past year, where people are trying to figure out how to express what they need to express at a protest, how to reach people that they need to reach, how to show that they are out there and they care, but also to be safe and to maybe not get arrested after the fact or like whatever it may be. And that's going to be very different depending on where you are. And so if you go to any website that has, say, a how to be digitally safe at a protest, it's going to be very rigid guidance. And we instead try to teach people how to choose which things are going to work for you in that moment. So if you're in LA and you are a part of a community that is really trying to be seen and to be seen as human beings, you may be willing to take some risks that other people are not. You may want to show your face. You may want to show your flags. You may want to like promote your identity. Whereas if you're up in Portland, you are making a different choice and a different risk assessment. So that's kind of like the gist of what SSD is now, where it came from, and kind of like where we're going, I guess.
I remember breaking down one of those guides that was written in the context of like the government is targeting you versus mass surveillance. I've been trying to kind of like differentiate that for a while, because even like in the extreme cases of when people talk about China, I'm like, well, we have FICO. And it's like, it's not paired with facial rec cameras and CCTV in real time, but we have our own credit score, and it's literally called a credit score. So it's kind of like it tracks a lot of information. So trying to get people to understand like mass surveillance, mass data collection, and we work on issues such as like data brokers, geofencing, things of that nature, and the way data brokers kind of like feed the industry in that sense. But then trying to break that from that realm to the guides of like actual usable security items day to day, where like your risk assessment may look different. Like we all had different situations happen to us. So I remember breaking down that mobile security guide from like, your phone is got you. It's like your phone has got you and it's got you in your bag, and the government has you an open ear to you, versus these are the things in your phone. This is what could get leaked. These are the things you can do. And I think a lot of the work that Cooper did as well, like mobile security, helped along with a lot of device that we can actually usably give to people, like disable 2G and things of that nature. It's a big feedback loop with SSD, and I think that's one of our big wins.
And it's like I recently, just for fun, this is my idea of fun, I go back and like look through like old operating system releases, and it's kind of fascinating to watch. Like even if you pay attention to this stuff, location access was rolled out in like iOS 4 or somewhere around there. And like, it's just like snowballed from there. And if you go into like the privacy settings, it's like 40 things. And unless you bother to do that every single time, you're going to miss new stuff. You're going to like, it's just impossible to like keep on top of. So even like a lot of like what is nice about having my brain trust of all these tech people who know what the hell they're doing, and I can just like write the words right. I can actually ask them what makes a difference, what matters, like does turning off location really do it? Like how do we know it does it? All of that kind of stuff. And it's kind of like the other nice backstop of SSD is that we have people who actually investigate this stuff and actually know and can tell me that I'm wrong or that I'm right. And like we can put that guidance out into the world.
And I think I can jump in there and talk about one of the other things that our team does. Cooper, Alexis, you do training, right? Some. Okay. One of the things that we do is security training for groups that may be targeted. This has been coming up a lot more in the past few months than it has been previously. And it's something that takes a decent amount of time on the organization. We have a program that we're talking about working on training trainers to be able to go out into their communities, because we're not necessarily the right people to talk to every community. And also we just don't fundamentally have the staffing to do it. So that's something else big that our team does on PIT and throughout EFF. And then one of the really cool parts about giving these trainings to actual people in the real world is that we can then take the perspective we get from them and feed it back into SSD. It's something we're working to do better at, but it's a possibility.
To tie it back into something you said, like one of the big changes that we've seen, I think, in the last like 5 or 10 years is that there used to be a lot of surveillance used to come from the government, right? Like we would think a lot about NSA mass surveillance, right? Or like, in other countries' contexts, like Chinese mass surveillance, right? And targeted surveillance. But now we see a lot of that surveillance coming directly from private corporations, right?
And I would jump in and say that one thing that I think a lot of people don't realize, but I think is important, is that it is illegal for the government to spy on you in a lot of ways. It is completely legal for private companies to spy on you and then for the government to buy that data.
Yeah.
And so if you are concerned about government surveillance, you should also be concerned about all of the data brokers because the government has money.
Yeah.
They print money.
Yeah, so another project we have is an 11-year-old project we have now is Privacy Badger, and Privacy Badger is a browser add-on that tries to detect what's following you around the web, what's tracking you on the web, and stop it. This has been a really interesting project, and so I started working on this project when I started at EFF 11 years ago. I now no longer work it. Our amazing devs, Lena and Alexis, work on it now. But when I started this project, I didn't really fully see how important it would be, right? Like I was like, okay, well, we're stopping obnoxious ads and we're stopping advertisers from building profiles on you. And that's good, I guess. Like that's important, right? But I was like, I want to work on cool stuff like NSA spying, right? And malware. Like what does this have to do with stopping law enforcement overreach, which is what I was really excited about, right? And it turns out it has everything to do with that, right? What we're seeing now is that law enforcement can get around getting a warrant, like Cliff said, right? You don't need a warrant to spy on somebody if you can just buy that data from a company. And there's all these companies like LocateX, which is selling location data to about everybody that comes from our phones, that comes from the advertisements on our phones, right? Fog Data Science, which is selling data profiles. Shadow Dragon, which is a company that's going out and making maps of all your social media presence online and making these huge Maltego graphs from exclusive API access that only they get because they broker deals with companies like Facebook and X and every other social media network out there, right? And police can just buy this. So I think Privacy Badger has gotten more and more important over the last 10 years, especially as we have continually failed to do anything to address privacy in the US, right? We have, like in Europe, you have GDPR, and you can say a lot of bad things about GDPR, but there's a lot of great things to say about GDPR. And we still don't have any sort of federal privacy law in the US. And at the rate things are going, it seems like we're not going to get one anytime within like the next 10 years, right? So we need and I mean, this is so the really cool thing about EFF is that we are a law firm and an activist group and a bunch of hackers, right? And we are at our best, I think, when those things all come together, right? So like our lawyers and our activists have been pushing really hard for federal privacy law, right? Like they've been working out there in DC and working and talking to other lawyers and bringing lawsuits and doing all this. But if we can't do that, at the same time, we can write tools like Privacy Badger to try to protect people in the meanwhile and force their hand, right? And try to bring about the world we want to see through that technology, right? And that's what our team does, especially. That's what, and Thorin does especially, right? Like we can protect people, even if laws can't protect them, we can try to protect ourselves, right? And that's I think the really cool thing about all these tools.
And I just to call out, since Lena and Alexis aren't here, to call out one cool thing about Privacy Badger is people were recently frustrated with Facebook and spying on them, and there's a media.
Recently?
What?
Recently?
Well, always, but it was again. Mark Zuckerberg put out this video where he said some stuff and things happened. Anyway, we were able to put out an article about how you can take money out of Mark's pocket by installing Privacy Badger. And so it's super cool to be working in a place that has, we're giving people the tools to fight back as best they can.
Another, can I talk about Threat Lab?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, sweet. So another project that we have on the team is called Threat Lab, and so this is our project to do like deep dive security research on behalf of like more at-risk populations. So like we're especially excited to work with like human rights defenders and journalists and sex workers and undocumented immigrants and like think about the things that are targeting those communities, right? So one of the big projects that we've been doing for a long time is my colleague Eva Galperin has been researching stalkerware and spouseware, which is a type of spyware that is specifically marketed and sold to people who want to spy on like their partner, right? Their spouse or significant other. And all the marketing is really gross too, right? It's all like, do you want to spy on, do you think that they're cheating on you, right? Do you not trust them? Do you want to spy on them? And it's often in conjunction with other forms of abuse, right? Like physical, emotional, psychological, right? And so she has been working really hard on first of all, getting signatures for these types of malware into antivirus, because antivirus companies had not previously been detecting this malware. They had been marking it as potentially unwanted programs. They had been essentially putting it in the same category as like, we don't know if you really want this or not. We're not going to tell you what to do, right? And Eva was like, no, this is spyware. This is just spyware. You need to alert people about this, right? So she got them to include signatures in all the major AVs for all the major spyware companies. There's been a lot of exposing. There's been a lot of talking to attorney generals to write laws, but she's also just been helping people, mostly women, who reach out to her and have had this spyware installed on their devices by their partners, right? And helping them like get it uninstalled, get safe. She's been working with another group. There's the Coalition to Stop Spyware. Is that the name of it? It's the Coalition to Stop Stalkerware, who's been like forming a coalition around this and making it more of a thing. One other recent thing we worked on was an analysis. So there was an app that came out that got really popular about a month ago called Ice Block, which was a tool to inform people. Like basically people could, if they saw ice in their area, they could upload a little notification to this app to let other people in the same area know that ice was present. And so we saw a lot of talk about this app online. We saw a lot of people worried about it, wondering like if it was sending any data. And I wanted to know, right? Is this an op, right? Like, is this a backdoor to get data on people who are concerned about ice? Is this, somewhat legit, right? Like, so we reverse engineered it, right? We took it apart. We looked at the code. We looked at the network. We did static and dynamic analysis on it to figure out exactly what was going on with it. And we found that it wasn't sending any data to third parties. It wasn't storing anywhere like unique IDs for your phone or your Apple ID account. It was like on the technological end, it was doing all the things right to do that. Whether I think whether I think they're going about that in the best way socially, that's a different issue. Like, I'm not going to cover that. That's outside of my ken. Like, that's for these communities that are especially targeted. Like, I'm not going to be targeted by ICE anytime soon. That's for those communities to figure out if that's a useful tool for them. But we can at least say, yeah, no, this tool, like, they did things right. They seem to, like, as far as we can tell, this is not an op. They're not actually, like, doing this to store your data and collaborate with ICE in that way, right? So those are the sorts of things we do on Threat Lab. And we're, like, really interested in talking to people in communities. Like, if you have apps in your community relies on, right? Like, and things like, I'm interested in like looking at Zelle, right? Because I know Zelle is used a lot by like the undocumented community to send money, right? Other apps like that like communities rely on, those are the kind of things that we want to start taking a look at and like doing reports on. So that's Threat Lab.
And maybe talking about a little bit of some of the investigation I did through like the Threat Lab. Oh, it's okay. It's all right. It's okay. It's fine. Like, it's not recent. It's been ongoing for a while. So initially I wasn't really like involved with Threat Lab, but I kind of got swung into it. And I also often have the joke that I'm not a hacker until my child made me one, because I was mostly just considered myself like a cryptographic adjacent engineer. That's why I worked on CertBot, stuff like that. But after one day I had to like put my daughter into daycare during the pandemic and the height of it. And that's when a lot of daycares had to comply with COVID regulations and guidelines and different daycare regulations and guidelines. So a lot of research went into that. Not a lot of spots were open. So I was like, my hand was forced on daycare spots and availability and pandemic and trying to work at the same time. So they immediately presented this app to me called Brightwheel. And I was like, an app? Why do I need an app for daycare? Like, just take my child and feed her some snacks. Like, why do I need an app for this? And I got it. A lot of it was like COVID regulations. We want to check in and make sure, like, temperature checks. And also, there was some sort of like brief moment where I was kind of like happy to see that she was happy. They were sending me pictures the first few days, but then I just noticed like this stream of data coming in about her just within 5 days. What time did she wet her diaper? What time did she eat? What time did she sleep? How long she slept? And I started looking at the app. I'm like, there's no 2FA on this or two-factor authentication for the parents' accounts. I'm like, how do you differentiate between a parent's account and a school account? It doesn't really seem that much different. What is going on with this app? What is this? And so I think about 2 months went by using this app, and it was eating away at me like at some point. And I think most people would just move on and use the app. But since we do the work that we do, I'm especially cognizant of it. So ended up looking at the application and about 2 or 3 others that were major at the time called Hi Mama. That was based out of Canada, and a few others. And learned that these apps were loose in the wind. Open cloud buckets of my child's photos, just a lot of loose data practices and security practices. Not any security mentions on their website, just a blank statement that they use Amazon Cloud and that the government uses Amazon Cloud, which means nothing. In this context, is AWS Gov is a whole different offering, and it doesn't apply to a daycare. So I was just kind of like, what is happening here? So I ended up contacting the CTO of Brightwheel and had a discussion with him, and he confirmed, like, yes, it is as bad as I think it is, and actually it was a little worse. He was like, the daycare app industry was completely unregulated, because even though we have laws like COPPA that our lawyers work on and talk about children's data and privacy, we touch on these things a lot, but since we don't have a comprehensive data privacy law, it didn't cover daycare apps in particular. So daycare apps are used by the parent, not the child. So COPPA does not apply, because it's not the child using the app, even though it's all explicitly children's data. So that's just considered another app. It was under the same regulation as like Candy Crush. So that's pretty much where that was. So, and out of that investigation, I actually out of that result was I got the Brightwheel, which was the largest used at the time. I don't know what the numbers are now, but finally got them to use 2FA for all accounts, for parental accounts and school accounts, and got them to segment what a parental account was versus a school account, and also got them to segment staff accounts versus administration accounts over time. And so that was the result of that investigation, because of the knowledge that we, like, I guess, cultivate on the team about Android and our Android security recommendations. Me taking that framework and applying it to this, and like asking our lawyers and working together with the lawyers and saying, like, what does the law apply to this application? And not a lot of technologists have that access, but I'm lucky enough to ask those questions and know what questions to ask. And so able to, at least out of that investigation, encourage everyone that was the top players in that industry to do something about security, even if it was not as much as I wanted them to all the time, which is a issue that a lot of security researchers have. If anybody's ever reported a vulnerability or bug in here and experienced the frustration of a company not contacting you back in 2-3 months, we have coders' rights as well, which is another tool in our pocket that of legal team that helps give advice to security researchers if they're in a bind. But in this case, I was able to access them as a resource, like, what do I do? So at least I was able to force their hand with the knowledge that we have on EFF on security. So between Brightwheel and Hi Mama actually has a whole vulnerability program now. And they actually have emails just for security now, whereas when I came to them, it was just a contact support page and just a generic response. But now they actually do have a security email specifically for vulnerabilities in the app, and they actually list when they do pen testings and all of that of the applications to the world. They never contacted me about it, because once again, security researchers don't always get contacted, but it's a real big coincidence that after my investigation hit Wired, that that all of this happened to happen afterwards. You kind of have to just piece together. But that's like one of the big wins I think out of Threat Lab that I enjoyed the most, and that was like literally my first Android investigation.
And now my kid's daycare uses Brightwheel, so thanks for keeping my kids safe. And now, we got to look at it again now to see what they didn't fix. Do you want to talk about Bad Box?
Yeah, let's talk about Bad Box. So once again, children's technology. So a lot of the thread on our team of just in general, we work on a lot of legislation that says they're talking about keeping kids safe. But one of the biggest things to keep kids safe is having a privacy law to protect all of our data, kids, adults, all of that. So a part of that apparatus is a lot of low budget devices are out there in people's homes. And so I'm going to try to talk about this part without scaring the hell out of everybody. Because so what this also the origins is based off my child. My child got a tablet for her birthday a couple of years ago, and it was a Android tablet, nondescript, something called Dragon Touch. And I had no idea what that brand or manufacturer was. I looked on the Play Protect certified list partners and that Google has. It's just a static list of manufacturers, and I looked on. I was okay. I don't know. I'm not sure who these people are. I look at her tablet. I see a very old version of Android. I see its own upgrade system that's outside of band of the actual Android security updates, which is a difference there that I saw in a lot of low budget devices. And its own like parental controls app, even though Android comes with their own parental controls called Family Link. And it was very sketchy. It had games in it and a Yandex-based browser, which is like based out of Russia, or Russian produced, I would say is better to say. Yandex browser. It was a really sketchy setup for an Android sold in this fashion off of Amazon. And I decided to dig through some of the research that our other colleague who's not here, Bill, he did an investigation prior to me getting this tablet, probably like 4 or 5 months prior, of Android TV boxes. So I'm going to ask this question. Anybody got an Android TV box in their house right now? Okay, not many. Okay, that's cool. Maybe check on that. Maybe disable it. I don't know. But, like it's there's caveats to that, but I'm just kind of glad it's not the whole room. But it's like Android TV boxes were specifically hit by a particular threat called Bad Box. And it's a botnet, essentially, that impacted a lot of devices and came pre-installed with malware. This is nothing that you could have done or protected from. You ordered off Amazon or was it Alibaba? Like AliCloud, AliExpress. Yeah, AliExpress or Amazon. And Amazon knowingly sells these devices today, despite they know the threat now of...
Still with malware,
pre-installed malware out the box. So as soon as you open it up, connect it to your network, it was doing all types of shady stuff. So it would download payloads of malware and it would connect to this larger botnet of activity. Mostly linked to ad fraud, but in other realms as well. So Bad Box is the malware botnet name. So that was the other investigation that I did. And I saw that indicator with Bill's Android TV boxes. And I saw that the same malware existed, the same artifacts existed on my daughter's tablet. And then I realized this was much bigger than TV boxes. So to summarize some of that, out of that investigation, it took 5 or 6 months to really break down what was going on with her tablet. But once I was able to come to a conclusion, I actually was able to publish it in TechCrunch and work with an investigative reporter. And what ended up happening is Dragon Touch has completely taken down their tablets off their website. They don't sell it anymore. So that's nice. They have pivoted since then, thank you, to digital calendars and cameras and baby monitors. So that's not that amazing either. But at the same time, they're not selling. They had whole whisper campaigns set up. Like, this is not just a one-off company. So a lot of low-budget Android devices are impacted by this. And so one of the recent developments is that Google is now suing unnamed Chinese nationals, those 1 through 25, which I didn't know you could do. I still have to ask our lawyers, like, how can you sue those? But, and they say about 10 million Android devices are impacted by this because these whisper campaigns have targeted people who buy low-budget Android devices. And we are still ongoing, like, what is the remedy for that kind of thing? And we can't recon all those devices, but one of the big players, Amazon, could do something, so we're still putting pressure on them and writing the FTC, and that's an ongoing campaign out of that. But that's a lot of stuff we do out of the investigative work that we do on the team. That's not just around tools, because there's no one tool to solve a systemic embedded issue sometimes.
I guess I'll highlight a couple things from there. One is comprehensive data privacy law is something that we should all want and would solve a lot of these problems. Another is I really like we're bad at letting things go. I think that might be a universal EFF trait. And so that one amused me. One of the tools that I think was used in this investigation is something that Bill, who's not here, put together, which is called APKeep. And APKeep is something that might be of interest to people in the audience. It's a tool for automated download of APKs from the Google Play Store and other Android stores. Oh, what are APKs? An excellent question. APKs is the Android software package that you download. And so if you want to look for this kind of malware, or you want to set up an automated tool to do that, or we're looking into some stuff related to data brokers, and we're probably going to be using APKeep as the foundation of that to get us those pieces of software to analyze. So just wanted to highlight that as another cool feature, or another cool EFF project. Yeah, talk about right.
So yeah, cool. So speaking of not being able to let things go, did you want to talk about something? Okay. Speaking of not being able to let things go, so I've been obsessed with IMSI catchers for since 2016 now. And so we recently released another tool called Ray Hunter, which is a tool that we've developed that runs on a $20 mobile hotspot. I'll get to that. But thank you for reminding me. To detect IMSI catchers. What's an IMSI catcher? So an IMSI catcher is a spy tool that police and national level spies can use to trick your phone. It's a fake cell tower essentially, and it tricks your phone into connecting to it. And then once your phone connects to it, it can get your phone to give up the unique IDs associated with it. The IMSI or IMSI, which is the unique ID for your SIM card, or the IMEI, which is the unique identifier for your hardware of your phone. And this can be used to identify you. The police can then go back and ask can ask phone companies, hey, what is the subscriber information for this particular IMSI or IMEI, right? So it's often used somewhat legitimately to track people down, like if somebody was kidnapped or like maybe in a manhunt type situation, right? If law enforcement goes and gets a warrant and uses that in a situation where like somebody's life is on the line, I don't really necessarily have any problem with that. What I have a problem with, and what we are concerned about, is that this could also be used to, for example, identify all of the people who have gathered in a particular area, right? You could use this to get the identities of everybody's phones at a protest, right? You could use this to get the identities of everybody's phones at a mosque, right? Or somewhere else where we're interested in spying on people, right? Everybody, you could use this, etc. So like on the border, right? That's another big one. ICE, we know, has at least a dozen of these tools that we know they use hundreds of times per year, right? Local law enforcement also has these tools. So what we were especially concerned about is those sort of like these being used to spy on First Amendment. And what we were observing was that a lot of protesters were worried about this too. And they were worried that police were using these to spy on protests. And like maybe even like another thing that these can potentially do is downgrade your connection to 2G so that then law enforcement can spy on like your SMS messages or phone calls that aren't encrypted if you're not using Signal, right? So we're concerned about that. So we built this device that is we built this software that runs on a old mobile hotspot that you can buy on like eBay or Amazon for about $20. And what it does is it looks at it looks at the network traffic going back and forth between the cellular modem in your device and the cell towers it's connected to. And we've written some signatures that essentially look for signs of a cell site simulator IMSI catcher, right? The Stingray is another term you might have heard maybe more often. They all mean the same thing. And so we've been distributing people have been setting these up. We've got them all over the U.S. We have found some interesting things in a couple of cities, but we had a lot of people running these at the protests over the summer. There were various, there was the No Kings protests, I think on June 14th. There were some other sort of adjacent protests early throughout the summer. And what we have found from people with these at protests is we've found no signs of police using IMSI counters at protests. That's great. Yay. Activists maybe don't have to worry about so much about IMSI catchers. And this is probably because what police do have to spy on activists is things like license plate readers that track your license plate, facial recognition, companies like LocateX that have databases of the locations of everybody's phones, Celebrite, which is a tool that police can use to they can plug into your phone and try to unlock it and then make a copy of all the data that's on your phone, including all your pictures, your historical location, all your signal messages, and all this other stuff, right? So we can use that to update our guidance in our surveillance self-defense guides and say hey, we are actually not seeing signs of these being used, right? But here are all these other things that we do think activists should worry about, and a lot of the same threat modeling. We don't call it threat. A lot of the same security planning advice we might give for those technologies will also happen to be helpful. But this is Ray Hunter has been a really cool research tool because it's given us the ability to sort of say where do we think these are being used, and also it gives us the ability to get ground level truth about how these technologies work. One of the reasons I've been so obsessed with them is it's been very hard to find information about how they work. It's been very locked down. And the companies won't talk about it, police won't talk about it. So this actually gives us, because of the way it's written, the ability to find out, at a low level technically, how they work and have that sort of ground truth evidence. So that's been a really fun project to work on. My hope is that it will end up helping inform our security guides, help inform threat modeling, help inform the communities that are super at risk that we want to work with and protect.
And one of the really cool things about Ray Hunter is that it's a community project, and we've got a whole bunch of contributors who are outside of EFF, so feel free to take a look and help us out.
GitHub.com/EFF.org. You can find all our open source projects. Questions?
Yeah, we should do questions.
Yeah, we got about 5 minutes for questions. Is that? All right. Sweet. So, yeah, if y'all have questions, did we get a room mic or no?
We can just repeat the questions.
Yeah, all right. So yeah, if you have questions, raise your hands, I guess. In the back.
Yeah.
A little bit further.
Here, I can just give you a mic so everybody else can.
Thank you. First off, thank you guys for being here. So I have sent so many emails to representatives and senators and rarely, if ever, get a reply. I can't help but feel it's not really doing much, and it's pretty frustrating and demoralizing. And protests haven't been feeling like they've been accomplishing much recently. So what really is in your opinions, the most effective per time way of fighting for the future that I want?
I can tell you're not based in California because you would be getting emails from all of those representatives, whether you want them or not. I think this is something that we've all struggled with on a personal level also. And I think, for me, it has been kind of turning to a lot of these tools and turning to the things I can do as an individual to help other people feel safer and at least, weather the storm here. I do think local level is also something that we tend to ignore and we forget about, the very hyper local representatives and pushing them to make changes, pushing things like Flock or other law enforcement stuff out of our neighborhoods, out of our towns, which that's not going to give us a federal privacy law, but it might make the neighborhood feel a little bit nicer.
At first I was going to say my answer is redacted, but I actually think that there are things that we like. So a lot of the like mutual aid work that got started during COVID, right? I think still applies, right? Like there's a phrase that mutual aid people like to use, which is "we protect us," right? And like building community, like building your community, right? Like building communities within your community, because like, yeah, no, you're not wrong. Like, I feel the same way a lot of the times, right? Like, but I think building that community and community preparedness, right? And like having a network, right? Like that's like doing prepper stuff, but not doing prepper stuff like hoarding beans and bullets. Doing prepper stuff like building community resiliency, right? And building those friendships and like building alternative food networks, frankly, and building alternative network infrastructure, since we're at a hacker conference, like doing, things like Mishtastic and stuff like that, right? And like getting ready for when shit gets worse, because shit is going to keep getting worse, right? And having those networks in there, I think, is super important. And then those networks let you do things like direct action, right? Those networks let you do things like going and making life physically hard for the people that are in charge of your government so that they are forced to listen to you, right? Those networks let you do things like general strikes and stuff in the future. So that's what I would say.
There's this like one episode that I watched a really long time ago that kind of like helps me in those like days where I'm just like, I don't think this is effective. At least for in the immediate, like long term, sure, maybe, but you're just not sure, right? So I don't know how many people actually watched the Boondocks. I did. So there's this episode with this character named Huey who's more progressive, and he's talking to his granddad, and he's like, "Granddad, what do you do when you can't do nothing? But there's nothing you can do." And his grandpa turns around and he's like, "You do what you can." And I remember that episode just because of that, and that actually drove a lot of what I do now.
I would definitely recommend the Boondocks as a good show. That's not super helpful for this question, and I don't think I have a satisfying answer, but I would reiterate the like building community is important. A lot of the stuff that we can do is based on the people around you. So meeting your neighbors, having a block party, talking to them about the issues is something that's really powerful. A very silly thing that I did in my neighborhood is I worked with one of my neighbors to get the like wood chipping for fire safety. And it's something that through that we met a bunch of different people. All of the like different houses in our neighborhood had these piles of wood out front, so you could see everybody working towards a common cause. And it feels like it's nothing in the moment, but this kind of unified our neighborhood, and we all are more connected now. And it's not a technology thing, but it helps. And then the other thing I would say is that a lot of the traditional methods for making change, they don't work until they hit a critical mass, right? And so I would highlight that what is happening now is based on a coalition that is actually really fragile. It can feel insurmountable, but these people are assholes and they kind of hate each other. And so like those calls to your senators aren't going to work until they do. And so I would encourage you to not give up on some of the traditional stuff.
I'll also add that we have EFA groups, which if you're looking for like a local group, depending on where you're at, what city you're in, there might be a local group, like a tech group. The EFA is the Electronic Frontier Alliance, and they are a large group around the U.S. If you have someone local, it's a great way to kind of like meet people and do all of that. I think we're kind of out of time after one question. Is that right? But we are doing another Ask EFF panel tomorrow at 2 o'clock. 2 or 2:30 tomorrow, and it's all about questions, so we will be happy to answer them there too.
Where you can come talk to us and give us money and get stickers.
Yeah, there's a booth over there that we have in the vendor area.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. So that was a great talk. Thank you guys for giving up your time. We also are collecting donations on behalf of EFF and WISP at the door. If you guys want to continue supporting their work and the work of WISP, thank you guys for coming and have a good night.
Thank you.